Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming today. Thank you, Your Excellency, for coming today, and members of the DFA as well. My name's Dylan, and on behalf of DU History, the Eastern European Society, and the Department of Russian and Slavonic Studies, I'd like to welcome you to today's talk, the first of our series on understanding Europe's East. Before I start, just housekeeping, if everybody could have their phones on mute, and if just for safety reasons, there's exits at the back there and there in case of an emergency. Just before we start, I'd just like to invite Connor to come up and talk on behalf of the department just about this series of talks.
My name is Connor Daly from the Department of Russian and Slavonic Studies, and I'd like to welcome you all here this evening. Добрый вечер, ваше превосходительство, дамы и господа. Заповядайте на нашата лекция на bulgarskата культура. And welcoming you to this evening's lecture on Bulgarian culture, which is the first in a series of explorations that we're putting together along with the History Society and DU History Society and the DU Eastern European Society on parts of the eastern part of our continent. I don't want to use the label Eastern Europe because it's a little bit tainted by associations with the Iron Curtain. But we're talking about countries then that are on the far side of our continent. They're a long way from us, but they share a lot of the same preoccupations and dilemmas around identity, but perhaps more intensely because they're sitting on a fault line built on empire. I'm thinking the Ottoman Empire, obviously the Austro-Hungarian Empire, the Russian Empire, and the Prussian Empire. And at the same time, they are sitting under that shadow of the Iron Curtain, a curtain that threatens to reassert itself today, as we see from the actions of Vladimir Putin and his war in Ukraine. So we look forward to exploring that over the next 7 weeks. And to set the ball rolling this evening, I'm going to hand back to our moderator this evening, Dylan of the DU Hist Society, Historical Society.
Yeah, so I'll just introduce the speaker for today. So the speaker is Dr. Dimitar Kambourov, who is a current lecturer in Trinity for the Department of Russian and Slavonic Studies. He teaches Bulgarian language, culture, and literature. He is also an associate professor of literary theory and comparative literature at Sofia University. Over the years, he has proven himself to be an expert on literary theory and has been a research fellow in places such as the Free University of Berlin, Central European University Budapest, and Ionia University, Greece, along with many others. He has contributed a lot to public understanding of these areas as well, and we're grateful to have him here to speak to us today. The talk will last around 35 minutes, and there will be a Q&A session afterwards for anybody who has any questions about anything brought up. So I'll let you take it away.
Thank you very much. Thank you, all of you who made it to come today. And I'm equally happy to see Irish and Bulgarian colleagues here. It's very good, kind and generous of you. And I want somehow to underline the fact that I am not a historian. So what you'll hear here has to do with my literary professional deformations in a sense. So although I'll be addressing historical moments, I'll from time to time maybe will give some interpretations that could be challenging or even iconoclastic. So I'm very sure that it might produce some reactions, and I'm happy to hear them in our Q&A after that. So it will be very much, I'll try somehow to draw my conclusions on the basis of 3 key moments in Bulgarian history, taken in their literary and actual official representation, and 1 key character of Bulgarian literature, and its modalities and cultural reincarnations and representations. And I'll start with this kind of statement that we Bulgarians actually love to complain. And after offering my title, some Bulgarian colleagues and friends expressed doubts about it. They suggested it focuses on shame and guile in the sense of trickery. This focus was already a kind of cliched retrograde anachronism, let alone that it didn't seem to comply with the recent foreign policy trend of promoting the brand Bulgaria abroad. So these friends and officials disapproved of my title for promising another extended complaint about what it is to be a Bulgarian. And I have to admit that the topic was provoked by the famous dedication that the Bulgarian Maria Todorova put at the beginning of her seminal book, Imagining the Balkans. And it goes, to my parents, from whom I learned to love Bulgarians, to love the Balkans, sorry, without the need to be proud or ashamed of them. By thanking her parents, her father, actually, the historian Nikolai Todorov, is the founder of Bulgarian Balkan Studies, for her love for the Balkans being released of the pride and shame. Maria Todorova, in fact, suggested that her love is capable of getting rid of all these feelings that we very much associate with the very basis of our self-perception. This is something that we could consider very much like a paradigmatic opposition in modern Bulgarian self-perception since the very beginning of Bulgarian revival in the 18th century. I'll just start with a very short words by the Saint Paisius of Hilendar, who wrote in his groundbreaking book Histories Slavonic in 1762 the following: "Oh, you unwise moron, why are you ashamed to call yourself a Bulgarian, and why don't you read and speak in your native language? Weren't Bulgarians powerful and glorious enough? Didn't they take taxes from strong Romans and wise Greeks? Or out of all the Slavic nations, they were the bravest one? Our rulers were the first one to call themselves kings, the first ones to have patriarchs, the first ones to baptize their people. And they have conquered the greatest territories. Why are you ashamed of your great history and your great language? And why do you leave it to turn yourselves into Greeks?" So, as you see, Paisius is angry, and we could say he's also ashamed by his compatriots for their shame to call themselves Bulgarians, and urges them to start feeling proud to be Bulgarians because of their glorious history. The same binary opposition we discover in the poetry of the greatest Bulgarian poet ever, Hristo Botev, who curses his compatriots in immigration with the words. I'll first read this in Bulgarian just to have the feeling of how it sounds in Bulgarian. Тежко, тежко, вино дайте. Пиян да нас забравят и що ви глупци не знаете позор ли е или слава. In English, it's hard, so give me wine. Drunk, I can forget the face, the thing you fools cannot define, where lies glory and where disgrace. Yet the most eloquent singer of the pride and shame is by far the poetic chronicler of the 1876 April Uprising and the entire revival, the national romantic poet Ivan Vazov. In 1883, only 5 years after the liberation from Ottoman rule, he wrote his famous cycle of 12 odes called Epic of the Forgotten. It is widely known to be the greatest glorification of both the revival and the April Uprising. Yet this passionate, romantic poet used 24 times the root of pride, Gord, 21 times the root for glory, Slav, and 9 times the root for honor, Chest. He never used the word for dignity, dostoinstvo, and I'll come back to this. At the same time, he used 24 times the root of shame, Saram, 3 times the Russian root of shame, Strit, 3 times the root of dishonesty, Beshchestie, 10 times the root of infamy, Pozor, and 27 times the root for foul, Pad. So we have 54 usages of the lexeme for pride, glory and honor, and 67 usages of the lexeme for shame, disgrace and fall. It seems the most ardent flag waver Vazov, in his most patriotic literary work, was incapable of offering more words for pride, glory, and honor than words for shame, disgrace, and moral and or physical fall. being Bulgarian and simultaneously being capable of loving your country outside of Vazov contrast and antithesis is not an easy task, we could see. Maria told both of being able to get rid of Vazov's difficult love, of pride and shame, and I do believe her family education and academic training in Western universities helped. Yet for most of us, it is quite impossible. Our love of Bulgaria is and remains difficult and controversial. And of course, the question is, why is it so? And Vazov implies that pride and glory are more often than not a fruit of atonement and redemption, of the repented shame and infamy through a great moment of heroism and self-sacrifice. Bulgarians have always been in a quest for these rare moments of sublime heroism, sacrifice, cultural achievement, territorial enlargement, and so on. They will redeem for the shame of and infamy of the long periods of slavery, of underdevelopment and backwardness, betrayals, cowardice, and desertion of the granted freedom, as Vazov writes. So the very opposition between shame and pride could be very much thought through the mechanism of narrative. It is something that was very much like the shame that is compensated by pride through the acts of redemption and atonement. Or vice versa, that we have these glorious moments of pride, of achieving something tremendously high, and after that, those long periods of fall, of disgrace are coming to replace the bright moments of the past, so that to give another a chance for ascending, of rise, and so on and so forth. So the moment here is that this narrative actually doesn't work that well. Even in Vazov, we could see that actually the very opposition of shame and pride are constitutive for the entire universe that he's creating. And more often than not, we could see that very much they are mutually constitutive, so to speak, the pride and shame. And that's what I'll try somehow to demonstrate with the historical moments that I want to discuss with you. So I'll start with, so you generally maybe know that there are two, again, very opposite perceptions about Bulgaria on the historical map. The first one would be that Bulgaria is the oldest European country that managed to preserve its own name from the beginning to now. And of course, some have doubts that San Marino, for example, or some other places are maybe better in this respect. But this is a general perception that we are, so to speak, the oldest nation that managed to preserve its name. At the same time, the counterpoint of this is something that is also repeated with a lower voice, and this is that Bulgaria actually spent much more time, not much more, but a little bit more time under foreign rule rather than as a free country. So we have these very, very opposite perceptions about what Bulgaria is, and it is also something that comes very close with this idea about the very glorious moments in the first Bulgarian state, and that I want somehow to start with. So this is the moment in which Bulgaria has come to the moment of being a Christianized country. So we're talking about a second half of the 9th century. And after being baptized, after accepting Christianity from Byzantium, came the time of the great ruler, of the great leader of Bulgaria, Simeon the Great, as he's known. So this moment is relatively short after accepting Christianity, and it took something that we call a golden age. In Bulgaria, it's actually a golden century It may be a little bit overstated to be a century, but it's a relatively long period. And the importance of this period is not only that it was the time of the greatest possible enlargement of the Bulgarian state, the so-called myth of the 3 Cs that Bulgaria managed somehow to reach, but it is also a period of tremendous development of culture, literature, language, writing books, and so on and so forth. And this is something that this golden age, this golden period of Bulgarian history, with this very perception of political and cultural, so to speak, mirroring, creates this fantastic, powerful image of a great achievement. Bulgaria as being the third or the second most powerful country in Europe at this period, of making Simeon making somehow to achieve the title of king, Tsar. And this was given to him by the Byzantine highest possible power in front of the walls of Constantinople. So this moment, this kind of historical moment, is well known, but it goes, especially now today, it's very important that it goes together with this particular focus on an event that took place in this exactly periods, late 9 and throughout the 10th century. And this is the moment of the creation of an alphabet. We've talked with Connor about this. I wanted maybe to show you, but I very much hope that most of you, even maybe all of you, have managed to see this famous scripts, Glagolitic alphabet, and of course, you know Cyrillic alphabet pretty well. Although I'll be very happy if you manage somehow to see the old version of Cyrillic alphabet, because this is very close to what I want to discuss. So the point here is that Boris the First, and after that his son, managed somehow to save the deed of the brothers Cyril and Methodius. This deed has not been initially associated with Bulgaria. It took place in Moravia, in Great Moravia, and when it was prosecuted there, the disciples, the only surviving 3 disciples of Cyril and Methodius, have been accepted in Bulgaria. They received refuge. They received fantastic conditions for developing here their deed, but they practically started from scratch, because they, at least that's the legend, they came without any books. They have everything in their mind, and everything started here in our territory, in Bulgarian territory. So all these translations that have been done already by the brother Cyril and Methodius in Great Moravia. Macedonia obviously is a complex, a kind of obsession here in my consciousness, but in Great Moravia. So all this has been started from the very beginning in Bulgaria, and it has started again with this Glagolitic alphabet, which was the original alphabet that was created by Cyril himself. But what is very important here is that for some unknown reasons, in this particular period, another alphabet has been introduced. And this alphabet is the one that we all know, the Cyrillic alphabet. And this is exactly the alphabet that actually we started celebrating much more, so to speak, in a much more focused way now. So the point is that this alphabet, the Cyrillic alphabet, was something that is important, because this celebration that actually replaced the name of our famous holiday, the holiday of 24th of May, in which we celebrate exactly the alphabet. So it used to be called a day of Slavonic alphabet and other things having to do with education, Bulgarian education and culture. And now, 4 years ago, actually, in December 2020, the name of this holiday has been changed, and now the celebration is actually about the Bulgarian alphabet. And the idea is very much that this Cyrillic alphabet was created in Bulgaria, and this is very crucial because exactly this alphabet is the one that we managed, so to speak, to export, to distribute among the other Slavs, particularly the East Orthodox Slavs and some Southwest Orthodox Slavs, of course, Serbs I have in mind. So the moment here is kind of important because Slavonic alphabet, Slavonic script, being replaced with Bulgarian script, it very much means that we not only insist on first the legacy of what we've received from Cyril and Methodius and their disciples, but also of creating something new that was original and that was given as a gift to the other Slavs. And this gift is something that very much works as an indebtment with regard to them, I have to say. It sounds very much like this. So the crucial moment here is also that there is an active replacement of implementation of application of this alphabet for all Slavs, Bulgarians including, with the question of origin. And here the moment with the origin is particularly crucial because this Cyrillic alphabet, and this is something that every Bulgarian could learn from any possible textbook, is of course not an original Bulgarian alphabet. It is an alphabet that is an extended version of Greek uncial majuscule script. So the so-called Cyrillic alphabet for a very long period of time hasn't had any name. It was just the script that has been used, and its image, its kind of presence in the books of Bulgarian books for quite a long period of time looked very close to what Greek books have been looking had looked in this period of 8th, 9th, and 10th century, especially the uncial form of books. Greek alphabet took a different turn in this period. So what I'm suggesting here is very much that by making this change, this dramatic change in the name of our holiday, we undertook a risky gesture because, of course, this will put very much the question about the level of originality of the so-called Bulgarian alphabet. And the other moment that somehow puts together this controversy a little bit even further, it is the fact that immediately after this golden age, and very much within the very way that this golden age took place, the way it developed itself, we could see that it very much brought to an end the state, the first Bulgarian state. Some say that it's very much we have to do it. It is very much something that we're indebted to the great historian Peter Mutavchev. A long time ago, he wrote and insisted on this, that it is not very certain actually that Simeon I was the one who wanted somehow to enlarge Bulgaria, that maybe his great idea was to become exactly a basileus, to become an emperor of the Byzantine Empire, and in that sense that would have been the end of Bulgaria even before the fall of Bulgaria in 969-71. In this period this happened. But what I want somehow to keep in mind is that this golden age somehow brought, by the very idea of developing and emphasizing the introduction of Byzantine culture within Bulgaria through the instruments like the Cyrillic alphabet. This is something that very much brought to an end the first Bulgarian state. And this is something that gives very much this double image of glory and tragedy at the same time, because it is exactly, and this is something that is the end of this first episode, it is exactly through the fall of Bulgaria under Byzantine rule that actually these books that have been the product, the great achievement of the Golden Age, managed to find their way to Kiev, Rus, and after that to Serbia and other places. So in a sense, the great expert of cultural revolution that we could discuss here, that we could keep in mind as a possible way to call this, was achieved by the very act of a fall of a state, of disappearance of a Bulgarian state for about 160 years. So this is the first thing that I want somehow to raise. The second moment that is of crucial importance, we should go a little bit further, several centuries. I will kind of just mention that the moment of Bulgarian fall under Ottoman rule managed somehow to be reshaped, renamed in the period of Bulgarian revival as Ottoman slavery. And even Turkish slavery, actually, that's important to call it with its real name, Tursko ropstvo, Turkish slavery. And it was a crucial gesture because it was very important somehow to install in the consciousness of contemporary Bulgarians that what they live is actually something that has nothing to do with their prosperity, with the fact that they very much turned to be the greatest producer in the Ottoman Empire, that they were the main client for the Ottoman army, for the Ottoman military forces, but rather that what they live is exactly slavery, Turkish slavery. And this was very much to create this idea of national liberation, of course. So what is even more surprising, though, is that a century and a half later, we continue having this very strong conviction that what we have there and what was happened in this throughout these 5 centuries was exactly slavery. No matter that many historians managed to demonstrate, to explain why it couldn't be called slavery, what we've had for these 5 centuries, no matter that the whole mechanism of distribution of power in the Ottoman Empire allowed kind of level of autonomy of the Christian communities within this empire. The very concept of slavery is something that is so deeply saturated the Bulgarian psyche that it seems that it is impossible. And every attempt somehow to this to be changed in textbooks, in official literary and historical documents, not in historical books, of course. There we have this has been done a long time ago. But everything that is on the level of officiality and mass distribution, the resistance is very strong with regard to this concept of getting rid of slavery. So here I come to the moment that is of great interest for me, and this is the question about what is it that managed to actually provoke the Russo-Turkish War that brought to the liberation of Bulgarian, the resurrection of the state, of the third Bulgarian state. And the general narrative goes like this, that it was the April uprising of 1876 that managed to give this very crucial, very clear sign that Bulgarians are already ready for their freedom, that they, so to speak, turned themselves into a political and historical subject, and they have been noticed at the end of the day by the European people, by the governments, by the great intellectuals who raised their voice and pointed out that they're Bulgarians, they're Christians, that they're the last Christians on the Balkans that are under this foreign yoke or foreign rule. So the idea is that this brave act of uprising was very much seen in the general perception as a heroic act, as an act that was meant somehow to topple down, to overthrow this foreign rule. The question that remains unsolved up to this moment, I have to say, is to what extent actually the people who organized this April uprising, the so-called apostles, the leaders of the revolution, really believed that what they're trying to do through this uprising is to overthrow the foreign power, or they were absolutely aware that what they need to achieve is something very different. And what they need to achieve from that point of view is rather something that will be provoked on the other side, which is, so to speak, the so-called disproportionate response. So very much what we could see here is that the great intellectuals, educated people who led this uprising seem to be very aware that what we actually needed is not only this disproportionate response, as I called it, but also a very, very strict ratio between the number of people who rise up and people who actually die. So the number of people who actually died was, at the end of the day, 3 times more than the people who rose up. And this is something that was very much strategically calculated and managed somehow to be fulfilled by the organizers. And also the question in that sense is, which is the symbol? What was this that managed, so to speak, to change the public opinion of the European people, of the European audience? And we have to say that it was not this moment of brave acts of heroic gestures of fighting, of overcoming, of defeating the enemy. What actually turned into a symbol of this uprising was the Batak massacre. So we have this moment of the uprising. It was already practically quenched. It was already dead in the moment in which Batak events happened. And this relatively small settlement that first started the uprising, very soon understood that there is no future in this, and the people there decided just to stop. They not only stopped, they accepted to turn in their weaponry. And that was the moment in which the massacre started. And it was something that was not only that it was terrible in itself, but it was so terrible that 3 months later, when the International Commission came to Bulgaria, it was impossible, so to speak, to hide, to clean up the place and somehow to get rid of the result of this. And the result was this a number of important correspondences, particularly from Magahan, an American journalist, who managed somehow to shock, to really stun the entire world. And we have to say that exactly this moment, the moment of tremendous fall, and also in a sense, this is Vazov is very, very appalled by this, but a kind of compliance and contribution of the very people who participated in their act of being slaughtered is something that turned out to be the most successful gesture of this entire revolution that we're discussing now. So in that sense, Vazov is particularly angry with this. He very much insisted that these heroic places like Perushtica, he has a very important poem in the already mentioned epic of the forgotten, it is dedicated to their gesture. But the way Vazov presents the gesture, the heroic gestures of Perushtica, and despite the fact that he so eagerly insists that it was an act of heroism, what actually comes at the end is exactly the act of self-sacrifice, of self-killing that the key figure, Kocho, actually undertakes. So we once again have this kind of very, very tight knot between pride and fall, between dignity and tragedy in this sense. And we are not very good, so I'll try to be very short here with our third moment that I want to discuss. So the third moment has to do with more recent history. I'll put aside the First and the Second Balkan War. That is also interesting, but I'll focus a little bit on this having to do with the Second World War. So I particularly will address the contemporary interpretation of what happened then. And as you know, Bulgaria once again made its historically problematic, to put it mildly, choice of getting into a coalition, of choosing allies, so to speak. And once again, of course, it made this historically problematic gesture of joining the Axis. So the great moment in this act of bad historical choice was celebrated by Bulgarian official historians and by the state in general, with the fact that Bulgarians were among the very few nations in Europe who managed to save their Jews. So this was something that was highly celebrated, and for a good reason, because it is true that Norway, Denmark, and we Bulgarians managed somehow to do this. Unfortunately, this act of saving Bulgarian Jews had to go together with the other impossible, so to speak, to put aside moment, and this is that the occupying forces, Bulgarian occupying forces in Aegean Macedonia and Aegean Thracia, in fact, didn't save the Jews of these territories. So the paradoxical situation here is, of course, that these Jews there were not recognized Bulgarian citizenship. And that was the prerequisite for their sacrifice, for them being sent to the death camps. At the same time, though, it is exactly the fact that the Third Reich promised the solving of the unsolved national problem, the one of cut of severed territories of Macedonia and Northern Thracia, that gave the only, so to speak, justification for this wrong historical choice. It was very much something that was in the very essence of Bulgarian self-identity, somehow the unification of all territories, and that was exactly the possible justification for this gesture, for this choice. The problem here is that in the very moment in which you pretend, so to speak, to solve your national problem, you at the same time accept the realities of being small, of being, so to speak, a servant of a great power, in which you obviously declare that these Bulgarian Jews there are actually not Bulgarian. So this is the third pretty problematic and mixing together this glory and shame moment that I somehow that I want to keep in mind. And my counterpoint of all these things that I wanted somehow to address, and I'll be very brief here, comes from literature. And it comes from a book that has been written in the late 19th century by Guile. And the point of this book is very much not somehow to avoid this terrible opposition of shame and pride by transferring the entire cluster of shame towards a particular character that is, of course, representative for the substantial community character, but still it was done from a particular perspective, and this perspective is the perspective of the narrators. And they're already educated, they're European, they're modern, and these narrators that are different from the author, this is important to be kept in mind, they very much could afford to have fun, to make fun with Baigano, to be ashamed of him, and also very, very important feeling here, the feeling of embarrassment, they're embarrassed by him. the problem with this book, however, is that the very narrators that present this character being underdeveloped, uncultured, deprived of manners, deprived of interest in arts and sciences, and so on, petty bourgeois who is actually bringing his goods with himself, with his own clothes and so on. So this funny, to a very large extent, figure of Baigania, at the same time is seen from a perspective of these narrators whose claim is actually very problematic. Why? Because their own level of Europeanness, so to speak, of civilized claim to be a part of the modern European world is unfounded. It cannot endure any check. And anybody who is interested to see this, the book is translated into English. You could easily check to what extent the very narrators are problematic from the perspective of their claim. So what we have here is that actually their shame with regard to Baigania is more shameful than Baigania's shame itself. And from that point of view, the very situation that we find ourselves seems to be even more problematic. But here it comes my last things that I want to say. Actually, the crucial moment here with regard to this small book by Baigania is that the narrator never identifies with all these narrators. He uses them as fictional narrators, so to speak, but he was smart enough and clever enough, so to speak, to manage somehow to dissociate himself from themselves, from their perspective. And here the crucial moment is that maybe he comes to this moment that the very knot of shame and pride is possible to be subverted from one possible perspective, and this is just to get rid of pride. If we get rid of this necessity somehow to perceive our history and our identity from the perspective of pride, the shame will turn out to be something that is outdated, something that is by itself problematic. And the last thing that I want to say, I would say that this is something that we could see in another literary example of great importance of today. This is Georgios Boudinou's writing for the last several decades. And in particular, we could see in his novels, in his one of them was celebrated with the International Booker this last May. But what we see as a replacement of this impossible to solve knot of shame and pride is the concept of dignity. And this is what I would suggest as a possible self-perception that will come to help us. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Kambourov, for that wonderful, insightful talk. So we'll open the floor now to questions. So we'll give about 20-ish minutes for questions. Just try to keep the questions brief so we can get to as many people as possible. So if anyone wants to start first, Connor.
I'll set the ball rolling. And Dimitar, you've probably done a lot of thinking about other countries in your region, and I'm wondering. I'm looking at Poland in the 19th century, if we stick to the 19th century, and this kind of dilemma between do I express pride or do I express shame? We see it in Poland in the revival, we see it in Hungary, we see it in Czech revival. And in Poland, I'm thinking particularly of this image of Poland as the Christ of nations, as crucified, and that there's a paradoxical need to experience the degradation and even in Ireland, when you look at our own history, we define ourselves by opposition and positivity. Are there any countries around Europe that you think are more similar and less similar than Bulgaria in terms of what you described there? And in the second point, in the middle of your lecture.
Yeah, I think that I would say that the Balkans in general are the closest possible versions of Bulgaria. Here we could be also a little bit kind of it's again a rather shaky territory and a rather uncertain territory with shaking sands, because this is also an interesting difference, and the differences are very telling together with the common views. One of the things about Bulgarian being I didn't have time to talk at all about blank spot, why Bulgaria is to some extent could be described as the blank spot, not only in Europe, but even on in the Balkans themselves. And we have this image of many travelers who were actually falling asleep in Belgrade with a very strong resolution not to wake up to the moment in which they wake up in not to do anything but to wake up in Istanbul. So the idea is that it was very much like a mythological empty space, like a mythological road that is deprived of phenomenological density at all. And why is it so? One of the possible perceptions is that maybe we didn't manage somehow to make that much fuss, that much problems internationally from the very beginning to the end. It was this perception of being rather mild, rather accepting. This is something that makes this particular difference with regard to our, for example, Western Slavs. That was also something that we've vehemently objected when the Yugoslav war was called Balkan War. It was not a Balkan War, but again, it was projected this way as if we haven't existed on the European map. So in that sense, I will say that generally the common features that we share with the other Balkan cultures is crucial. And at the same time, even with regard to them, we have this mechanism of the so-called nesting Orientalism. So we are very much the victims in this respect, I have to say. Nesting Orientalism in the sense that it is everybody's somehow projecting itself as the West with regard to the other, that is perceived as a possible and comfortable East, comfortable Orient with regard to the one who perceives itself as a focus, as a center, and so on and so called. So on. So this is with regard to the other countries that you mentioned. It's also very important that in the Balkans we've had big problems with the very concept of Central Europe in the moment in which it was presented and defended, and became a big brouhaha in the Western world, particularly because the very invention of Central Europe did everything possible but not to notice at all the existence of the so-called Southeast Europe and the Balkans. Russia was a problem there. It was the big other in the great writings of the creators of the Central European concept, but our part of the world was practically absolutely muted. It was erased from the map.
We have some questions. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you so much. I'm a sociologist here doing my job. Tertiary educated Bulgarian nationals working in Ireland. I'm very interested in this vegan that we're talking about. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the influence of this character in the understanding of the diaspora, but particularly the diaspora's understanding of this.
I frankly have to admit that I don't know any. I don't have any observations on the way this book has been accepted and read and interpreted by the diaspora. I have to say this, but I'll make a guess, a wild guess, in a sense. My perception is that it is something that we could call an effect of Baigani in the wide audience in Bulgaria in general. So it is something that is very, very interesting. It started practically immediately with the appearance of this book It was criticized from a literal perspective and so on, but it was accepted as something that very much puts the greatest problems of Bulgarian identity and so on. Interestingly enough, Bulgarian wide audience accepted Baiganiu in a very different way. They very much identified with Baiganiu because they had this very smart and wise, I would say, perception that the perspective from which this character is presented is problematic. That this, so to speak, self-proclaimed Westerners who know so well what is good and what is bad, what is cultural and what is not, they are actually the one that have been put aside, and Baiganiu was presented and he was chosen as not only a character but a hero. So we have during the two wars, the First and Second Balkan Wars, that he was turned into a great hero, and we continue having this in our anecdotes. Actually, this is very interesting that we continue having this anecdote in which Baiganiu is in a kind of competition with English, with an Englishman, with the French, with American, with Russian from time to time. Of course, he outsmarts everybody. He's the one who is the winner at the end of the day. So it is a very, very strange situation in which the elites continue being ashamed by Baiganiu, and the general audience is absolutely opposed to this reading and mutely, so to speak, chooses the side of Baiganiu himself. All right.
On your comments, vis-a-vis Romania, would you say that much of what you said would pertain to Romania, or would you say that there is, difference between you and the thing?
I would say that Romania, to the extent to which I could talk about Romania, has always a different type of identifications with regard to Europe and European sources of glory, so to speak. So their recognition as being heirs of the Roman Empire, and the Western Roman Empire is of crucial importance here, and the entire idea that they were the Europeans of the Balkans, if at all they consider themselves being a Balkan country, especially on the level of their elites, is something that makes them very different from that perspective. If we take Choran's writing, for example, and compare it to anything that we could find in Bulgaria, there is very little in common, I should say. It seems that there is a kind of identification that is much more pro-Western, pro-Central European type of identification rather than what we have in Bulgaria. And I also want to remind you that the word Balkan has positive connotations in only two languages, and this is Bulgarian and Turkish. So we have to put in mind that the very identification with the Balkans was something that we embraced and somehow accepted the glory and the shame of this acceptance. And all the others were playing very much the opposite game, the game of nesting Orientalism that I already described.
Can I ask you to speculate on why? Would you say it's historical, or would you say it's geographical?
I think that all these factors had their importance, but the idea is that the perception that the Romanians were very much the continuation of the Western Roman Empire in our part of the world, whereas our main problem has always been the Eastern Roman Empire, Byzantium. That changes very much the picture. From that point of view, everything that we did up to the moment of the fall under Ottoman rule had to do not with the West. We haven't had any problems with the West, and West was very much out of the picture. In one particular moment, there was a kind of vacillation, hesitation where to go, whether to the Western church or to the Eastern church, and the choice has been done. We chose Byzantium, our neighbor, for good or for bad. But the point is that even if we go back to what I've discussed with regard to Simeon the Great, his idea was very much to catch up this fundamental, so to speak, myth in our self-perception, how to catch up. But the catching up had nothing to do with the Western world, so to speak, the Western Roman Empire. It was the catching up with regard to Constantinople, and that was what he was trying to do. He was called half Hellene, half Greek. That was the way he perceived himself, and he wanted to do this. He wanted very much to become a king of the entire empire, in which Bulgaria is a province. That is very different from that perspective with the Romanian case of seeing themselves as the Trojan horse, so to speak, of the West.
Any further questions, Graham?
For your lecture was really very insightful and interesting, and very long period of Bulgarian history in a very short time. I would be very much interested in hearing your observation. Also, maybe it's more challenging to judge how we are perceived from abroad, from our partners, let's say, the European Union. And
I thank you very much for this very important question, and it is a very difficult one as well. Actually, everything that I've said, I very much believe that it is still a problem unsolved, that we continue having in our genes, so to speak. Of course, it sounds a little bit problematic to talk this way, but it is something that continues to be in the national psyche. All these things having to do with the first Bulgarian state, with the second Bulgarian state, with the way we managed to get to a moment of liberation, all these things through the literature, through Bulgarian literature that was so much obsessed with the creation of national narratives and national mythology, and Vazov is, of course, the most important in this respect. These things are still the core of the educational system. From that point of view, it is practically impossible somehow to get rid of this fundamental mythological constructs that very much form our psyche. Well, what is the new? We could ask, how is it possible to get rid of this? And I finished with this, actually. This is exactly what was my perception, that the very opposition of shame and pride, the only way somehow to get rid of it is to get rid first of the concept of pride. If we somehow replace the concept of pride with the concept of dignity, with the very, so to speak, clear-cut and clear-eyed vision of who we are, the extent to which we are small, and the extent to which we are not actually small. This is also very funny that there is a long tradition in Bulgarian poetry of perceiving Bulgaria as like a palm. Земя като една човешка длан, но по-голяма ти не си ми нужда. A land not bigger than a palm, but I don't need you bigger than this. No, the problem is very much that Bulgaria is a very moderate country in the standards of the European family. And from that point of view, what is crucial from my perspective is exactly this, somehow a perception of dignity, of self-dignity within the measures and standards of our actual shape and size and presence in the European reality.
Anyone else have one quick? We might just finish up because I think we've reached just over 7. So
it's very much up to you.
Sure. So a big thank you to our speaker, Dr. Kambourov, and of course Connor for helping organize this as well. Next week at the same time, we're going to have a lecture by a visiting lecturer from DCU, Dr. Gezim Vizoka, on Kosovo conflict, peace, and its ambiguous future. So please feel free